This next section hopefully will be fun. It's going to be a bit of a rapid fire as in I'm not going to mute you, just, succinct answers because there's a lot of common questions I get often about executive branding, from usernames to bios and debates in there. And, audience, feel free to chime in with what you think your answers would be too. So rapid fire. We'll start with Teresa first for this one. Do all presidents or chancellors actually need to have individual social media accounts?
No, I don't think that they do. I think they've got to decide, is this a brand that's associated with this place, or is it my brand? Is it who I am as a person? So once you decide that, whether it needs to be yours because it goes with you no matter where you go, or if it's your identity wrapped up in the place where you work. And if so, then that better stay with that place.
Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, she's right. No. the answer to that is no. And I think it's also because, do you have the ability to add value with an account? So are you adding to a conversation? Are you able to commit your time, your very valuable, precious time as a leader to having an account? And is it going to communicate something that isn't already being communicated? If everything you post is already being posted on your main channels, you don't need one. And why would you spend your precious time doing that if it doesn't benefit you or the institution? So yeah, no.
My answer is also no. We didn't share answers before, I swear. And community can tell when it's a ghost written account, if it's not authentic. And again, is that an asset to the institution or even to that leader, or if it's just becoming another busy to-do list? Because you can feature your leaders in your main institutional accounts versus having their own, especially if they're not actively involved. Okay, we've squashed that debate. Next one, the most common question I get is about username and bios. So, is it at Chancellor Riley? Is it at Teresa Riley? What should people think about as they create a username, or does it even matter? Rachel, we're going to start with you.
Yeah. So obviously Teresa is at Teresa Riley. That's her account. She came in with it. She had built her brand. And I think it's really effective and really important that she is herself there all the time. So if you are looking back, you see her full resume of experience at higher ed institutions. You see all of the things she was doing at Kingsville, all of the things she was doing before she ever came here, and the relationships she built with students at all of the places she's been and all of the places she's spoken. And that's valuable. That brings something beyond what she's done here. You also get to see her husband and her children, and that is very real and relatable. If you follow her on Snapchat, you get to see her cats. Jerry is my personal favorite of her 3 cats. He is a tripod. But, you really know her. And I think that is so valuable. And that's something that we can't recreate. So I feature her all the time on our channels. I love content that has her in it. She does photo shoots with us. I said she's a great sport. But it's because that it's her account that she has so many followers and such a dedicated following. We do own the account at UAFS Chancellor, just in case. But
didn't even know that.
We don't want anyone else to have it, right? But it's closed. We have it turned off. We have it private. It's important to think about your brand and who could, be accessing those accounts. I know that's a huge problem on TikTok right now, is people holding account names hostage. But she is herself on social, and that's powerful. So I think that, if you want your username to be your institution, that's okay. But think about why. Are you going to own that? Is it going to stay with you when you leave? Is it a inventory of the work that the chancellors of the institution through history have done? Or is it about that person? And that's a decision you have to make.
Okay, thank you. Teresa.
Okay, so my parents already made my life really hard by spelling Teresa, Terisa. Very few people in the world spell it that way. They said if Lisa can be Lisa, then Teresa can be Terisa. I have literally no idea why that was important. So I constantly have to tell people how to spell my first name. Adding much more to it, I think, would make me even harder to find on social media. People will sometimes have a hard time just with the first name. There was a period, and I remember my children saying, Mom, there's a big push right now for women who have a doctoral degree to own that and to include it and add it to the social media handle. Are you planning to do that? And I said, I'm not because I don't really appreciate the hard work that went into earning this credential. And I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of the place that I studied. I'm proud of the information it allowed me to know and process differently. However, I just want for people to find me. When you change your handle on any of the social media accounts, it reduces the likelihood that people will be able to find you. And we have put out a number of things, whether that's on social media or even publishing, that tell you my handle is at Teresa Riley. And so if I add something to it and it makes it more complicated to find me, then it's not doing me any good.
The spell checking always says you misspelled her name. I'm like, no, I'm not. Back off, Grammarly. I need to add it. Okay. And so my view is, again, who do you actually want to connect with you? Do students really need to know the title? Or are they actually going to be searching that term? And to keep it simple, know if they already had a presence before. And like Rachel said, you might want to grab up other accounts for just branding purposes that are held as potential options too. Yeah. Okay. Last one, and this one might be a little saucy, is who owns the brand of a campus executive? Do campuses get to keep a leader's username or account if they set it up for them? I'm going to start with Teresa.
Yeah, absolutely. So if the campus is setting it up, they should absolutely keep it. And any account that has UAFS for us that identifies as this campus, we need to have that password. We need to be able to make sure that as people change over in their jobs, as students graduate, and we've got these great accounts that had a following, we don't want to lose the ability to pass that to the next person or next leader or student, right? So I firmly believe that if it is a branded account, it should belong to the institution. And again, it's not about going in and altering that account content. It is truly about being able to pass that forward so that you don't lose the followers and the people who want to listen and interact with that account.
Okay, Rachel.
This is someone who has listened to me preach about our social media policy more times than she would like. So I think if your institutional accounts are branded, if your central communicators are creating the content, the university owns that, just like we own any content that we're creating for our design, that we're creating for photography. But if you are helping an executive, so I coach a lot of our executives on campus, if you're coaching someone through how to run their accounts or, helping them plan content, that isn't necessarily the university's. It's just about what you are asking them to do and how much of your time is invested in that. Are you working with these people as a coach, or are you working with them as a content creator? And I think that's where you draw that line. But Dr. Riley gets to keep all of her photos of her cats when she leaves here one day, hopefully in a very distant future.
At my retirement.
That's your retirement. So this one is complicated. And again, it might depend on what the leader is coming in with, as well as where they're going to, and and how well branded that next institution is or not. I do think you need to have in the back of your mind, you might not retain this. If that person has an approach like Teresa, where it is so much her, and it would almost feel odd if all of a sudden someone else is showing up in the TikTok feed of your next president, because like that, even that branded element. So I think it depends. And I would just say too, that's why it's so important to have these conversations early on, building that relationship. And of course, we don't own any of these social media platforms anyway, right? Like, who knows what Facebook and Meta and Instagram are doing? Okay, so
important to know that you've got to be able to transition in leadership. Rachel and I were talking about this, and Josie, I know you and I have as well in a previous communication, which is that when you are the incoming leader, until you actually have the keys to the office, don't post like you have the keys to the office. The previous leader is still in that role until that time. And if you have a transition that can occur and in a collaborative way, possibly in some cases that is true, it's almost like a hand the baton to the next runner. And you could actually do some of that on social media if both parties are available, particularly at the time of, say, a retirement, and the new person's been selected. They could actually do some of that social media transition, which is a lot of fun, and it could be pretty inspiring. But I know that I was super careful when I was coming here from another job where I had worked for 12 years and really loved the place, had a great position, lots of great opportunities there, and wanted to honor that and acknowledge that leaving is hard when you love a place. And yet, when you get the opportunity that I got here, there's just no chance you turn that down. And so I was so excited about coming here, but I wanted to honor then the person who was still in an interim role so that I didn't appear to be the chancellor until I was the chancellor on my first day of work. I didn't want my social media accounts or anything else I did to reflect as though I was encroaching on that person's honored time. Because that's what I would want. No one told me that. It's not something you get trained to do. It's just something that, again, it takes you being empathetic and kind of sitting back and saying, what do I want if it's me? If this is my situation, how do I want this to go down? And so that's how I often reflect on it. And sometimes that means entrusting some of that to a person in your media or marketing communication department to say, what maybe I don't know this leader. Can you tell me what you think they would want?
Yeah. And she mentioned earlier that I followed her around for her first few weeks, but she also did a sort of meet and greet before she was, she had been appointed, but wasn't here yet. And so we had a conversation where I sort of just like stalked her and said, hey, so like, can I say this? What do you want me to call you? We can post both of you and say like, this is what our interim chancellor is doing, but hey, our chancellor appointee, I think that's what we settled on, is here for lunch and you can go meet her. And that's very exciting too. And so balancing that is something that you guys can do together. You know, I think that if you have someone who is cognizant of that change, then you can really work to make it seamless for everyone. You know, students might be afraid, faculty might be afraid, they don't know what change looks like. And you can ease that transition on social.
Well, so Rachel, one of the questions in the chat, is there a social media onboarding component for new executives at UAFS or at other schools?
I offer coaching. I think that the executives at UAFS who are interested in that do know that I offer that. So I have done, I think this is the next question on our list, actually. So considering in how you support an executive, you start with why. So when I have anyone come to me, our vice chancellor for advancement is really excited about social media and loves numbers and data. And he will be so excited that I found a way to weave him into this conversation. But he came to me and said, hey, I want to be more present on social. I want to be better at it. I know it's valuable. I know it's important. How can I do that? And so we sat down and talked about why. And you can find in the Campus Sonar Liz Gross book, Fundamentals of Social Media Strategy, a template for content matrixing. And so I do that with executives who are interested in improving their social media personally. And so this is all work that he'll be doing on his personal social media. It's not content that we're creating, but helping them matrix that content. How are you going to add to the conversation and help people know who you are? So are you going to be inspirational and a thought leader, and everything is going to be sort of accessible to everyone? Are you going to talk about your career here, what you have achieved at UAFS? Are you going to share your family? I would argue that you should, especially if you have super cute kids and a beautiful wife, like he does. So I think it's available, but it's not something that we necessarily have always done. But I would encourage everyone to read Fundamentals of Social Media Strategy and see how you can adapt that content matrixing system to helping your executives, because it's really something that you can grasp, that you can understand, that you've done before if you're a leader, and you can apply it to social media in a way that's really meaningful and really helpful.
I would also mention that we, under Rachel's leadership, we have created a lot of guidelines, training materials, so that ultimately, while there may not be a formal onboarding process, there are rules, processes and procedures around this and best practices. And so she's mentioned, one of the areas where she's helped to coach, but the truth is there are also some guidelines around this for our institution, and there really should be at almost any institution to have an idea of what is your property, what is institutional branding, and what are the differences between these. I know a lot of people who put something in their bio about, tweets are my own and not reflective of my institution. And I'm certain that there are people who work at an institution who believe that they won't be seen as the institution. However, if you are a chancellor, that's never the case. The voice will always be seen as the leader of the institution, influencing, those around them. And so it's important to remember that.
And I can tell you as a communicator, just take that out. You do not need that line that says tweets are my own. They aren't. Wherever you work, they're going to find you. So just don't even bother. Just know that you are you wherever you are. If you are using your real name, you are everything that you are representing. So just take that out.
And with it being holiday season coming up, you can drop my book on any of the desks of your campus leaders, Digital Leadership in Higher Ed. You can read about Teresa and many other examples. And there are exercises that leaders can do on their own or in groups. And then, of course, I do a lot of work with new and transitioning campus leaders and the work with their marketing teams to be a support system and aid for all those involved. From Steve, I'm wondering if anyone in the workshop works with a university president that regularly shares content on his or her own personal TikTok account. The question was, we have a president who embraced the platform and really enjoys making videos, has almost 1,000 followers. Congrats. But would that be better served through a university TikTok account where he can occasionally guest star? What do we think?
Why not do both? I mean, I think that's part of the fun of the platform is you can have your own platform. Often you will link in the narrative section, before you post your institutional handle, but also you should definitely guest star in the university, especially as it could send a message to a different audience and show your support for something that's happening. So Rachel might be able to talk about our Day of Giving videos and things that we did here that were about getting the message out broadly and how we use TikTok for that.
Yeah. So Teresa does have her own account at Teresa Riley on TikTok. And we have our account, our institutional account is at UAFS Lines. And she regularly guest stars, but that is not what her account is about. Her account is about showing that she has fun. And so I don't have any problem with her posting her own videos. They don't always work for what we're trying to do, which is not to say that they're not important or valuable to her platform, but I don't think you should necessarily squash content that could be good and could be engaging and fun and relatable just because you want some of that content on your institutional page. So when we want something really fun from her, I'll ask her to do it for our page. And we sort of have an understanding, okay, I'm not going to post this video because that's for the institutional page. That's something that's fun. So for a day of giving, we all did the bibbity bobbity boo, and we all changed into our day of giving shirts. And I spent way too long outside with Teresa saying, okay, now jump. No, not
jump
like that.
Differently, like jump differently.
Yeah, but too high.
I'm an old
lady.
I don't know what kind of jumping situation are we in here. And she's like, no, on the X. I made an X.
This is what we have to do for TikTok. it's jump.
Yeah. And so then we pull it all in and make the transition seamless. And it was beautiful and everyone loved it. But
it was adorable.
You know what is the fun sort of curated content that you're going to use on the institutional account. And so if you have a president who is active on a platform and you think, I wish we could be having that engagement. I wish we could have that, that kind of content that they're creating, that authentic voice. I would encourage you to either share it. So you can share TikToks, of course, or if it's another platform, send them a message and say, hey, I would love to be using this kind of thing on the institutional account. How can we make that happen? How can we work with you? How could I send our videographer? Dr. Riley said that she loves selfies. We have a bingo card, a UAFS bingo card, and the most popular square is take a selfie with the chancellor. And people will track her down and be like, it's the only square I'm missing. You have to help me. So when she's taking selfies and posting them, that's great content for her feed. And then I get to take photos of her taking selfies. And so that's one of my favorite photos to take of her, is her with some students, phone out. And that shows who she is. It shows that she's doing that kind of stuff on her page, but allows us to work together with that kind of content. So nobody's losing engagement. Nobody's losing out.
And I think leaning into, especially TikTok, I think there could be some fun duets or like challenges to like bounce off between the two platforms. I mean, even on Instagram now, you can have co-branded posts that could show up both on the institutional account as well as like your president or chancellor. So awesome. Okay, there was also another question a little bit ago about calendaring. Let me see if I can find that one, or did I? Editorial calendars. Should we have specific social media editorial calendars for our campus executives?
I think that's a great idea, but we don't do that. I think it's awesome. I think it would be great to be planning a little more forward with all of our content. But after 2020, everything was changing so fast that we just sort of set the calendar on fire. So we don't do that. I think it's a good idea. I think it's an important idea if you have to create all of your content at once. So if you get 4 hours with your president and that's the time you have to create all of the content, and you have them change jackets or change ties so they can move across the needs that you have, then yeah, you should be calendaring it out and planning. But when you have someone who can create so much of their own content, maybe you just go with the flow. So she's at an event, and I can say, here she is at this event, or here's a selfie she took with, the vice president of this organization. And we're able to use it a little more fluidly. Is that the answer?
I will also mention that although planning and calendaring is really excellent for preparation for big events and activities, those are some of the things that I think are meaningful in terms of the calendar. Some of it just needs to be spontaneous when it's your own personal account. Very little of that is going to be a scripted and scheduled thing. Often it's about what's happening here in front of us right now that we want to be able to capture live and show how dynamic the campus is at any moment, which is really fun. You can sort of see behind me, although it's probably a little washed out color, but, leaves are changing and falling. And I saw some students outside who were taking some graduation photos on a beautiful campus. And I'm out like, okay, hold on. You take your photo, but I'm going to take a photo of you taking a photo. And they're like, oh, are you in charge of the social media? I'm the chancellor. I just thought it was really cool to see you out here using your campus to show how proud you are and excited you are about your achievement. And I'm so proud of you. And I get to hand you your diploma. So let's meet right now. And this is awesome. I wanted to capture that minute in my life as much as in yours. So some of those things don't even have to make it to my social media. I decide that later. But that's spontaneous. It's that moment of time where you think, wow, I am so lucky. You got to capture those moments every time you can get them.
I think this is another element, tapping into the frequency of your specific leader or leaders. Is Teresa captures content already. It's part of her DNA on the go as a storyteller. You might need to be that voice of reminder, like when you go to this event, make sure to get this photo, or I'm going to send a photographer with you. There are some examples where presidents have an entire content calendar built out. I think that those are more frameworks where the marketing team is much more of the content creators and on the extensive end ghostwriters. So we've seen more extreme examples, as well as like a Teresa or a Walter Kimbrough, who is all of his own stuff. I think there is opportunities as we further strategy of campus leaders is where do we, like Rachel said, pre-plan and strategize in the future to make sure we're activating at certain periods of time, certain messages that's going to align with the institutional accounts for capital campaigns, more bigger campaigns that we want to make sure that we're all kind of nicely streamlined and advancing. Okay, we'll see if we got time for a couple more questions. Also related, Christine asked, how do you make time for creating content? It can be challenging for busy campus executives.
So I think that's another place where having access to Teresa's calendar is really helpful. When we were just now talking, I thought of how excited I was when I saw on her calendar that she was getting her COVID shot. And I probably texted her more times than were necessary. Don't forget to take a photo. Have someone take a photo. Hand whoever your phone. You have to take a photo from you. But it was great because it was one of those examples where we could show our commitment to something without having to say, go get your COVID shot. Here she is. She's getting her shot. We are working together. And by the way, here's when we're having our campus clinic. And so we can use that content in a variety of ways. So knowing where your executive will be is a good way to sort of curate content on the go, but also from events that you can use later, thinking ahead. But we also do photo shoots. So we'll book 2 hours with her team to make sure we get photos of her interacting with students, and we'll bring in Student Government Association, and we'll follow everybody around campus and get them in the library and, get them walking past the iconic campus landmarks. So we do create some content in advance, and then we have that to use later. So I know I try to get her out when the leaves are red, like you can see in the trees behind her right now, but also in the spring when students are first back on campus, or when she comes to big student events like our freshman welcome event. I think if you go find her on Facebook right now, her profile picture is her with students at Cub Camp, which is our freshman welcome event. And so making sure that you have a photographer at those places, or even you are at those places with your cell phone, or you tap a student to follow her around with their cell phone, curating that content gives you more to use. So you might not be planning these posts super far in advance. You might say, oh, here it is. We need to talk about this thing. Or, oh, we've just gotten permission to host a vaccination clinic. But you've gathered that content in advance. So thinking about where you can start gathering content, and then you can use it later.
I will also just say it doesn't take much time. It takes, and I think, Josie knows this story, 10 seconds can make a huge transformational difference in how people see you and whether or not they think that you are in their corner. Retweeting something that a student organization posts because it's super important to them can make all the difference for them, knowing their chancellor is aware and sees them. And one of the things that I do every single day without fail is on every one of the platforms that I use, no kidding, I go in and do a simple search for our university name and for our abbreviated UAFS. because ultimately that comes up with a lot of content from people who've invited me into their conversations without knowing they've done so. And so for me, that takes some days that takes a long time, because then I'm grappling with what I've seen and read, and I'm strategizing it, and I'm concerned about it, or I am proud of it. It just depends. You never know. Something different every time you look is what you're going to find. But ultimately, in the time that it takes to look at every one of these platforms, I could do it in 10 minutes in some days. Some days, it's important enough that I come in and say, clear off my calendar for this morning, because this is a biggie. And I've learned that somebody tweeted about harassment or sexual assault, or a concern they have with something happening at the university. It's often where social justice issues are surfacing, and that's not something you deal with fast. That's something we are going to be dealing with our entire careers, our whole lives, that we want to show our support and our just ultimate care for every single member of our community. And so sometimes we do need to sit and work through, I'm reading this, I haven't responded to it, but it deserves response. Sometimes it deserves strategy. Some people who are more likely to complain on social media platform than they are to fill out a work order or something. And so one thing that Rachel and I would be remiss if we got off this particular chat without talking about are the anonymous accounts. The ones that, and if you're not familiar with these, please go look for your university and, maybe include the word barstool. Or, bad or trash or whatever. So as I got here, there were several anonymous platforms, and one was, I think, broke at UAFS and bad UAFS. And the truth is, these parody accounts made me a better chancellor out of the gate. So I know that sounds surprising. They are out there to make fun of you. They are out there to say you are trash, like the dumpster fire of 2020 sort of relationship, right? So the truth is that when you listen, pay attention, respond to the things that are serious with strategy, and joke and have fun with the account when it's clearly a joke, then that makes all the difference in the world for how those accounts begin to perceive the institution and reflect it. And so there were frequent times where I still have no idea who ran any of those accounts. People graduate, they move on, they go to, they pass the baton of their accounts. And recently I realized I miss my parody accounts. It's like they all graduated and nobody took them on, because right now people are exhausted. And why take on another account? Why take on another thing? And so I just posted and said, I miss my parody accounts. Where are you guys? Like squirrels at UAFS. Where are you, Bell Tower at UAFS? Where are you, bad UA? Like, come on. Because sometimes that was how I learned the voice of students without any breach of anonymity, without anyone fearing retaliation. And then often those folks would send me private messages and say, it meant the world to me that you worked on that. And no one had to come and tell you this was a problem. You just fixed it. Well, no, you told me it was a problem. And so you deserve for things to work right on your campus. You deserve the best things. So it's up to you to tell us when things aren't the best. That's the only way we know to correct them, because I'm not living your experience every day. So that is a powerful tool. Embrace it. I know some people will strategize against or around it. Embrace it. And when you wonder, are they having fun with you? Is it a funny thing? Ask. I'm like, I know you're joking, right?
I think you might be one of the first chancellors that have asked for parity accounts to come back. But the way that you interact and banter and have fun with anyone that's activating in a conversation around the campus. One thing that also didn't come up for me to share about Teresa, not only is she so authentic, but she's the digital intelligence and emotion that she shares. She says she loves her students. There's empathy and emotion that can be communicated in digital forms that goes a very, very long way. And even the skills of social listening, that could be another takeaway from today to coach. It's not just what you post, it's how you consume and use these tools to better understand what's really going on your campuses. Teresa and Rachel, thank you so very much. This was I hope very helpful to folks to be able to feature a team approach that's very based in relations and values. Thank you, CUPRAP and Volt and all attendees that are checking this out, either live or in the recording. As I shared at the very beginning, we know there's so many challenges happening for marketing pros and all higher ed pros right now. And that's why I'm doing a series of free retreats called Renew in December and January, that we're just going to hold space and be spacious as well as strategic together. So you'll get a link about that if you or any of your team are looking for some processing space that you won't just be talked to or at, you'll be talked with within community. And then, of course, you can find me at Josie Alquist. My new digital community building cohort launches again in January, where we give social media training, especially to new social media managers that you might be bringing on. Thank you so much for all the interaction in the chat.